webinar, Magic XPI Integration Platform for SharePoint and JD Edwards. My name is Glenn Johnson. I'm Senior Vice President here at Magic Software Enterprises Americas, and I'm joined today by Ryan Beck, Senior Consultant for Magic Software. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Glenn.
And welcome to all of you who are joining today's webinar. We hope that you will have a great experience with us today. We're going to be recording today's webinar so that you can follow up and take a look at it, share it with your colleagues. We also would invite you to enter questions into the chat dialog box or into the questions dialog box, and we'll get to those questions as quickly as we can right at the end of the webinar after the formal presentation. The Magic XPI Integration Platform for SharePoint and JD Edwards is the topic of today's webinar. However, if you have questions on related areas, you may enter those in as well. We'll certainly be happy to try to accommodate as many of your questions as possible. Just don't ask things like, why is there error? Because I'm not sure we'll know how to answer those. But, you know, we can Google it. Ryan's pretty philosophical, so we'll see. Okay. Magic Software, of course, is a company that has been empowering customers around the globe for more than 30 years with smarter technology. It delivers a multi-channel user experience for enterprise business processes, business logic, and data. Okay, so we do that because as a global provider of application development and business integration platforms, we have proven experience, we have innovative technology, and we're able to focus on the business needs of our customers. You may know that Magic Software has been in business since 1983. We're a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol MGIC. And we have offices around the world with customers in more than 50 countries worldwide and about 1,000 employees and 2,500 business partners serving thousands of end corporation customers and millions of end users. So Magic Software is a company that is very well established in the IT industry, serving those of our customers who look to people like Gartner and Forrester. We are a Gartner and Forrester ranked visionary and top performer for application and integration platform solutions. And we're a company with a strong focus on the success of our customers. We offer the Magic University program, which allows you to be trained in our technologies. We have a 24/7 technical support team across the world that provides online support as well as phone support. We have the ability to provide global professional services through Magic's global services team as well as our business partners. And we invite you to take a look at our financials in detail. Just to summarize, Magic Software has had revenues of $126.4 million in 2012. That resulted in non-GAAP operating income of $18.3 million and GAAP operating income of $16.2 million. We're also very pleased to see cash flow from operations at a healthy $18 million and a solid balance sheet with $38.8 million in net cash. So the company is performing extremely well, and this is part of a multi-year trend that has pleasantly been continuing despite the global recession of 2008 and 9, and so we're very pleased to see these kinds of results continuing for the company as we offer our technology solutions to customers. Magic is a company that has been recognized as a visionary and top performer. We've received SD Times 100 Award for middleware. We're ranked in the Software 500 list. We've received SAP Awards 3 times, the Salesforce.com Integration Award winner. We have an alliance status with major vendors in the industry so that when you look at our technology, you can see that we have Oracle validated integration or SAP certified integration. We have the ready for IBM SOA specialty, IBM server proven technology, App Exchange certification from Salesforce.com, and so forth. So these kinds of alliances have been going on for our entire existence, and we are able to act as Switzerland, if you will, as a neutral player in the technology industry that's capable of integrating with Microsoft.NET and Java, with legacy technologies, and web services and service-oriented architecture and cloud integration and mobile technologies. And so the ability to bridge the gap is becoming increasingly important to customers around the globe. We did want to highlight the Magic Software Users Conference coming up June 3rd to the 5th, 2013 at the Encore at Wynn, Las Vegas. This will provide you with 3 days of Magic XPI for JD Edwards education. It's a very affordable event. The rooms for the group rate are $149 a night. The conference rate for the education piece is $595. That includes most of your meals while you're there. So it's a really great experience, and we invite you to participate in that by going to MagicSoftwareUsersConference.com. Now, today's webinar is about JD Edwards and SharePoint. And so when we talk about SharePoint, we're very pleased to be in alliance with Microsoft through the Business Critical SharePoint program. We were just at Collaborate talking to JD Edwards users and PeopleSoft users and Oracle Business Suite users about the ability to connect SharePoint in Business Critical SharePoint applications to your back-end systems. And so some of you met us there, some of you have known us for years. And we certainly encourage you to continue this dialogue and questions. We hope that today's webinar will really get to the meat of some of the things that are on your mind. And if not, we're definitely eager to set up, those one-on-one appointments where we can demonstrate new proofs of concept and so forth that are going to be useful to you for your specific situation. We're coming from a certain position, obviously, within the market. Magic offers a one-stack technology comprised of a very comprehensive integration platform and a very powerful multi-deployment mode application platform. What both of these have in common is a metadata-driven capability to leverage underlying platform capabilities for integration and for delivery of applications so that you do less programming, less coding. In fact, we frequently hear people refer to these as code-free solutions. This enterprise-grade reliability is known by our customers. Companies like ABI, who have more than 1 million ADP payees in their system. AutoZone with 4,600 retail locations. Borg Warner with some 7,500 employees serviced by an integrated SharePoint internet. Cleveland Golf that has sales teams that enter their iPad sales orders from a network of 1,400 locations. Mizuno, which tripled their volume in the first year after installing the Magic XPI integration platform. Rapatoni, that has a Magic XPA application that supports some 300,000 users, processing 85% of all the real estate listings in the U.S. Rexall, which has their Remedy CRM integration solution across 1,800 retail locations in Canada, utilizing Magic XPI technology. Roadneck Technologies, which has integration to apps managing more than 200,000 vehicles per day. Sony, which has experienced a 10 times increase in volume since installing the Magic XPI integration platform. And Toto, which experienced first-year ROI, able to move their order cutoff back by 1 hour and save a day, or spend less than a day, in their upgrade to JD Edwards in the 9s. UPS, which is integrated to the world's largest transaction database, and Vishay, which has a product catalog that consolidates SAP R3, SAP R3 ECC6 for 2,000 rich internet application users around the world. And so these are companies that are accelerating business performance by utilizing Magic technology. Let's talk about SharePoint and JD Edwards and really how there are some trends in the industry which are mega trends that are focusing people on the need to find ways to bridge the gap between their back-end systems and their SharePoint applications. Well, one of these trends that we would look at is the idea that 84% of organizations have a remote workforce. We know that mobile is red hot in the industry right now because these distributed workforces are demanding the ability to do their work through their mobile devices. And so we're increasingly needing as IT departments to deliver solutions that are connected to the back-end processing. There's some 4 million millennials entering the workforce each year. We're seeing a new multi-generational workforce that is leading to the consumerization of IT because the younger workforce has newer expectations in terms of the way things interact social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, are all shaping the way that people expect interaction and processes to take place. So what we're finding is that 65% of companies are deploying at least one social software tool in their business. And this is taking place despite a very big roadblock, and that is that 70% of IT budgets, 70% of IT budgets are spent maintaining inflexible and siloed data center solutions. So the infrastructure is becoming, for many organizations, a problem. And that's what we're here to talk to you about today, is how you can have the kind of integration platform that's going to make it possible to connect SharePoint and JD Edwards. Now, what's helping is the rise of the cloud. With the rise of the cloud, we understand now that more than 80% of large enterprise IT managers are at least in trial stage for cloud computing initiatives, and these numbers are going up all the time. So these trends are causing people to look at a problem that they see in their organization. And that problem that they see in their organization is, excuse me, I just lost the play mode here. Can you still see my slideshow? It's purple. It's purple. Okay. What is pausing screen share? Can you see it now, Ryan? There you can. Okay, very good. Thank you. Had a pop-up that was one of those little nasty notifications that you get that caused that to happen. Sorry about that. So the problem that IT organizations are facing is that there are siloed applications. The data exists in PeopleSoft, and it exists in the CRM system. It exists in a supply chain management system like Manhattan Scale. It exists in an e-commerce platform like Shopatron, and so on and so on and so on. And so what we find is that organizations have these siloed data limits, which are limiting business performance, and this is creating organizational pain points. Business critical data is stuck in these siloed systems, and it's frustrating users and IT. There are disconnected teams that are resorting to ad hoc, inefficient, and unreliable processes. We see this as line of business users begin using SharePoint to solve problems because they have it available to them, it's been provided to them, and they have the know-how and knowledge to create usable SharePoint applications and portals and so on. But what's happening is that these are attempting to accomplish some of the same business tasks and challenges that back-end systems are also interacting with, and so there's an overlap. And that means that decisions when these systems are disconnected are based on inaccurate data, resulting in lost competitive advantage. So the majority of organizations, business users, don't have direct access to important business data simply because they're not ERP users, they're not CRM users, but they need to know something about a customer. They need to know something about finances related to that customer and so on. And so we see that a small percentage of the organization is licensed or can access that business data directly because only certain people use the ERP system, usually the financial and accounting people. And so the PeopleSoft and Microsoft Dynamics and SAP and JD Edwards and other kinds of ERP systems that we might be talking about today are really becoming isolated from these SharePoint applications that are popping up in the organization to solve these problems. So when you're a JD Edwards user, you have both the user side as well as the IT support side of that JD Edwards application. We need to talk about how you can enable business-critical SharePoint solutions by connecting SharePoint to your line of business application, specifically JD Edwards. Now, with SharePoint, it is now possible to have a way to organize ad hoc data, to enable processes, to drive productivity through a familiar platform across that will face all of your users in your organization. Many of you already have enterprise-wide SharePoint licenses, and so it isn't a question of acquiring the software, it's a question of using it, applying it. And with Magic XPI as the integration platform, you're actually able to automate the integration and flow of information from those back-end systems to SharePoint and vice versa. So you're able to surface business data, the benefit being that you can increase access to business-critical information by connecting back-end systems to Microsoft, SharePoint 2010, 2013, 2007, doesn't matter on the version. You can improve processes, meaning you can implement, extend, and improve business processes by building these solutions based on SharePoint, where you have new business functionality, new visibility of information across the organization. And that's going to deliver ROI to your organization very quickly so that you're decreasing business risk for your line of business applications and SharePoint usage so that you don't run into situations where you have a broken process or information that simply is not available. So what can we use it for? Well, business-critical SharePoint solutions respond to the needs of your business organization, and that's going to vary from company to company. But it's going to typically be relying upon those back-end systems, delivering a SharePoint application that provides some specific functions, such as product development or compliance reviews or inventory management or supply chain management that may be related to HR hiring processes and so on. So let's look at, in the JD Edwards context, what some of those might be. The common integration use cases extending JD Edwards to SharePoint are things like employee self-service, manager self-service, and customer self-service there on the left-hand side, where a self-service portal gives you the ability to provide a common user interface via SharePoint that is accessing information from back-end systems and perhaps documents as well, and serving all that to the user. But there are other kinds of e-commerce related requirements that are very popular, where people are creating company-wide product catalogs and pricing information and sales portals and even transaction portals for trading partners and customers. And then there's the whole area of custom processes that we just talked about a moment ago that are facing both ERP users and non-ERP users with incredible new capabilities that integrate not only to JD Edwards, but also to other enterprise software such as a third-party CRM system, supply chain management, logistics systems, HR systems, and so on that might be supplemental. These may be Oracle Edge applications, other Oracle business applications, or third-party applications. So the good news about SharePoint, for those of you who are saying, well, what can I do with it? There are a lot of templates that are out there for SharePoint. If you go to Microsoft's developer website, you can find all of these templates that are listed here, and you can see that there are a lot of really interesting things like disputed invoice management that you can have workflow within a SharePoint application that's managing that. Organizations that are rolling out a lot of retail locations, there's a new store opening application in SharePoint. You have, for organizations that are dealing with a lot of change orders, you have change request management SharePoint apps. And for event planning, you have event planning apps. So it's just all over the map. There are dozens of these that are available on Microsoft's website, but also through third parties and shared SharePoint templates. You have a lot of capability out there. You can also just develop your own SharePoint designer, and that's fine. You create an application. And then the question becomes, okay, now how do I interface it? How am I going to get data into that SharePoint list that's accurate, updated, and synchronized with those back-end systems? Well, one of the examples of how you can do, or what you can do, is address book integration. So let's assume we're running JD Edwards World. You see that in the bottom lower right corner of the screen. You're running a SharePoint application for contact management. And using Magic XPI, formerly known as iBold, you're running a Z process, the F0101 Z process. It's accessing the F0101 data table and providing contact information, bidirectionally from JD Edwards to SharePoint, or you may have users entering new contacts in SharePoint that you want to synchronize to the back-end master item database or with the F0101 table. Another great example are time cards, where you have a SharePoint time card application where people are entering time and attendance information. You may have manager approval processes related to that, and then you want the typical JD Edwards Enterprise One review processes related to that as well once the information has been brought in from your SharePoint time and attendance application. This is another valid approach and option that you can pursue. When you do that, there's going to be overlap between the two systems because some of that functionality is already in JD Edwards, but you may be doing this because you want time and attendance managed in a SharePoint app that's available across the entire organization rather than being entered manually by your ERP user. So you can automate that, and there are going to be a number of touch points that you're going to need to look at in JD Edwards, probably the most important being the employee transactions batch file, the F06116V1. But there are a number of other related tables that could be important in this kind of situation. You may have a union rate file, for example, for your organization. On others organizations, that's not going to be relevant. So as the business analyst looks at the business process, you're going to be able to find those touch points and find out where your data integration needs to take place, where your processes need to be automated. Third example, expense reports. With an expense report application running in SharePoint, you have a very easy way for users across your organization to enter their expenses and then to be able to integrate that to JD Edwards. And you're going to have integration points like the F20111 expense report header and the 0112 report detail that are part of those expense report processes. But in detail, there may be a number of other touch points that you need to look at as data and business analyst for these various areas. So some of those are identified here. As a JD Edwards business analyst, you kind of have a handle on what those are. But one of the great things about pursuing an integration project like this with SharePoint to these back-end systems is that you can also bring in external consultants, if you're not as familiar with this, that can be a part of that project that help you to map all of that and understand where the information needs to go. So a fourth example, just to kind of get us thinking creatively about what we can do for our organizations as IT departments to deliver business value. Asset management applications. There are a lot of situations where there are people that are interacting with assets, need to be tracking assets that are not ERP system users. And so a SharePoint application is ideal. With the asset management approach, you're going to see a number of tables that related to capital asset management in JD Edwards that could be of interest. It may be related to maintenance schedules for assets, as well as the asset master file and so forth. So looking at this, you're going to be able to see that you can create some very nice SharePoint applications that will provide the information that's needed by JD Edwards in order to keep things up to date in JD Edwards. A fifth example, we mentioned this earlier, the e-commerce concept, would be that of product catalogs, where you have product catalogs running in SharePoint that are available across your organization, and then in JD Edwards Enterprise One, of course, being the system of record for your product catalog, for your master item database related to that. And so you have all of the product data management tables. This is very complex, as most of you know, in JD Edwards in terms of the table structure. This can be one of the more challenging areas, but depending upon the extent that you're utilizing this, some of you don't have things like Kanban master tables in your organization. So it really just depends upon how you've implemented JD Edwards, which of these are going to be most relevant for your organization. Closely related to that idea of the catalog itself is the price list for those items. This may be a single SharePoint application, maybe a separate SharePoint application. It really depends on what type of information is most important for you to surface to the user. And if users just want pricing information, they don't care about product descriptions and other related details, then the price list application approach might be most important. Think of HR when you're trying to visualize what you can do with SharePoint and JD Edwards together. Think of human resources requirements, because in the human resources area, and we've talked about a couple of those examples already in terms of things like time card management. You have users across your organization, and many of them are not ERP users, and so they need an interface. They need a way to interact to get that information, so that you don't have to enter it manually, do duplicate data entry. You want to have automated processes between your new SharePoint employee self-service applications and your back-end systems. And so here you can do things like have employee paid time off interfaces running in SharePoint that will then integrate on the back end to JD Edwards. You can do things like having resource capacity planning so that as you're managing projects within the organization in the project management offices, you may have a SharePoint application that's able to do very sophisticated management of your people, reporting of time and project management, and that resource capacity planning information is something that can then have an impact and interrelationship with JD Edwards in terms of project delivery information, billing, and so forth. So how do you do it? You use an integration platform. What we provide from Magic Software is the Magic XPI integration platform, which you see in the center of the diagram there, connecting out to all of the Oracle applications, Oracle Edge applications, and third-party applications that you might have in your organization. The ones shown here are simply for the purposes of illustration. There are literally thousands of possible business applications that you can interface with utilizing technologies such as web services as well as direct adapters for important business applications like JD Edwards itself. So we have these pre-built adapters, we have resources, we have wizards, and that means that you don't have to resort to programming and coding. You can use a loosely coupled service-oriented architecture approach. You do it visually, which Ryan's going to be showing us here in a moment. It allows you to extend JD Edwards so that through SharePoint you have integrated applications facing large numbers of users across your organization. This simplifies development and maintenance of integration to third-party applications because when JD Edwards, for example, you go through an update, you upgrade to version 9. We had a whole webinar about this yesterday. You now all of a sudden can spend just a few minutes and your integration flows are maintained in the process. So that's a very powerful benefit when it comes to development and maintenance of your integration, that those third-party apps change as JD Edwards changes. You have this sort of backwards compatibility with the old version that allows you to bring all of those integration flows forward. And then if there's some new module or something that's been added to your software application that does something that it never did before, then obviously you can start to think about what the new flows are, the new integration processes are that you want to have related to those in your organization as well. So the Magic XPI integration platform follows a service-oriented architecture approach, which means that you have reusability, a very open approach that's based on industry standard methodologies. You have discoverable services. You have a very scalable environment, and you have repeatability of processes, idempotence, as we like to say in IT. And it is a very secured environment, extensible and reliable. So as we talk about Magic XPI, we're talking about a technology which is mobile and cloud ready for integration, meaning that you can easily interface to Magic XPA mobile applications. You can easily interface with cloud applications such as Salesforce.com and literally thousands of others. So you can do this by leveraging your existing assets and enabling them as services through service-oriented architecture. So by utilizing the components and the wizards and the resources that are built in to Magic XPI, you're able to access a number of legacy technologies and proprietary technologies. There are also a number of more open approaches, obviously, that are being utilized as APIs today. Things like SOAP and RESTful web services. And with SOAP, you're leveraging the web services description language, the UDDI. With REST, you're leveraging HTTP GET and PUT in order to interface. And so these are all just kind of touching the surface of the hundreds of different ways that you can try to interact. From an architectural viewpoint, when we talk about Magic XPI, we're talking about a platform that provides resources, full connectors and adapters and so on, that allow you to do the data management, the data mapping and so forth that you need to do, but also to orchestrate the business process and expose those business processes that you have designed, utilizing the business logic appropriate to your organization as web services. So not only can you consume web services, but you can publish web services, making it a full service-oriented architecture approach to business process integration. All of that is surrounded and secured through industry standard security protocols, and you have visibility of all of this architecture for integration through business activity monitoring of logging of information. From a development standpoint, it's very straightforward, as we'll see in a moment, allowing you to utilize the Studio interface and the SDK that comes built in with Magic XPI. So what Ryan's going to show us is how visual the approach is to integration, how it streamlines complexity by allowing you to work in a business process flow approach, a business process flow being the idea that you can have triggers and have sources and destinations that really follow the business logic for your organization, allowing you to do the data mapping that's required and then monitor the activities that are taking place in the integration environment, so not only for debugging purposes, but for audit trails and so forth. How is this different than what else is out there? Well, Magic XPI has some real differentiators for JD Edwards users. First of all, it's Oracle validated integration. We have both Enterprise One and World adapters. Many of you are World users know that that's a very uncommon statement. And it's providing you with a real-time and event-driven architecture for JD Edwards integration. Very scalable, and there's no Java programming required. There's no overlapping multiple middleware products that are being offered in order to provide the solution. It's one integration and middleware environment that allows you to have a consistent user interface to accomplish everything you want to do. Business processes, enterprise service bus, data integration, not the 3, 4, 5, 6, a dozen different products, but one solution and user interface for all of those requirements. From a SharePoint standpoint, it's also very powerful because not only can you leverage business connectivity services, since they were introduced in SharePoint 2010, but you can also very powerfully use Windows SharePoint services without having to do any programming. So by bypassing the need to write those web services utilizing Magic XPI, you actually have a much easier approach, something that a business analyst in your IT organization could do without having to requisition a team of programmers in order to accomplish it. You can get access to the information in your SharePoint lists and so on in the back end of SharePoint and populate those as well, so everything's bidirectional. Lots of customers across the JD Edwards community are utilizing the Magic XPI integration platform. We're naming some of them here. You probably know many of these organizations, and we would encourage you to talk to them and ask them how they're utilizing Magic XPI in their environment. What I'd like to do now is actually share what's going on here with Ryan so that he can show us his desktop. So we're going to get that going here. I'm going to see if I can find you in the list here, Ryan. There you are.
Yep. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to, in a second here, share out my desktop and show a live demonstration of actually using Magic XPI to do what Glenn just talked about. We're going to connect SharePoint, which is, of course, a Microsoft web service, web presence-based interface, and we're going to actually connect that to our JDE environment. So we'll be able to get full connectivity from E1 here. We've also done World or a different version of E1, and we're going to actually connect that to our Salesforce environment, or sorry, SharePoint environment. I get those two confused all the time. And basically be able to get information bidirectionally between the two. Anybody could obviously pull data out of JDE and be able to, say, query a table with ODBC or Oracle or whatever. But I think what we really want to do is show you that we can get data into JDE by using the correct APIs and Oracle validated interfaces, such as business functions, Z-tables, and things like that. So I'm going to start here by going into JDE and showing you an address book and making sure that it's empty ahead of time, or at least the record we're looking for. So I'm going to look up, I don't know, let's put up a guy named Steve Smith and see if he's in here. And there's no Steve Smith, hopefully. Yeah, nothing. There are other things in here, but actually what we're looking for should come back empty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the other tab in my browser and go ahead and do a new record. And I'm going to put in what we were talking about and come up with some address. I don't know. And go like that. And before I save this, by the way, you'll see at the bottom that the JD address book number here is going to be empty. The reason is because what's going to happen as soon as I create this, it's going to go get that. And it's going to do that by creating the record in JDE. And then basically the response from the business function is going to be I'm going to open a new window here. I think I froze that one. I think the response from the business function is going to be the new one. So if I look for this, we don't find anything yet. But if I go ahead and save this, what will happen is after a couple seconds, Magic XPI will pick up this record, take it with it to the JD business function and call it. So as I refresh this side, after a couple seconds, you will see it pop in. Also, when if I refresh this record here on this side, we'll see this magically this number popped in here, the 74106. At the bottom, you also see that I created it at 11:41, and about a minute later, actually less than that, it was modified by a service account that was actually connecting, and that was actually Magic XPI that did it. So this is basically going to show all the same information on this side that I did on the other one. If I open it up, and it'll show me basically all the same fields like the mailing address I made up and the city and street and whatnot. So what this is doing is this is showing bidirectional communication. We responded to an event. An event was that something was created here in SharePoint. We were able to grab the data, pick it up, and pull it, and call a JD business function and return the response. Now, one thing that's key to this is that what did I have to do to actually make it work as the end user? Well, the end user doesn't have to do anything. It's all basically transparent to them. The integration is done by a server somewhere that connects to SharePoint, it connects to JDE, it connects to anything else it needs to, and it basically does all of that without anything needing to be installed on the user's desktop or anything. They don't even know it exists. All they know is, hey, they put something in the SharePoint, and look, it came back with the JD address book number, so they know it worked. So so basically, the point there is that if we want to see how this really happened, we'll have to dive a little bit deeper into what's called the Magic XPI Studio, which I have up on the screen now. And the Studio is where we create the project that ran, that actually wrote the logic behind the integration. So on my screen, I have all these little icons you see everywhere. You're probably wondering what those do. Those are called steps. And steps are just an instance of a component. So as I drag a component from the left side over here, say I want to work with JDE, as a for instance, I would drag the JDE component over and drop it on the flow. And what that would do is it would cause the server to run that the next time it came through. If the data was going to JDE, it would run down here and run this component at the end. Now, the way it works is, and let me actually go to the one we ran, is you'll have lots of flows in your project, and they'll find the right one based on your criteria. But if I want to work with JDE, I just need to say what business function I want to work with. It's all wizard-driven. I can search for business functions. So if I want to work with sales orders, I can either do hang on, my screen sharing got paused too. I don't know how I did that. Yeah, there it is anyway. So if I want to look for sales orders, what will happen is I can look for anything related with that word, or I can even go back and browse the whole server and find the module I want, which is pretty cool. These are basically business functions out there on the JDE server that exist, and we're able to log into it with what's called the dynamic Java connector. It's an XML interop in and out, and this basically allows the Magic XPI to go in and see which ones are there. Now, these could be custom business functions that your organization wrote or modified or installed, or they could be the default ones that came with the JD Tools release. So if I go into this one, say to edit a sales order, what it will do is it will go in, log into JDE, and find out what parameters this business function requires, and present it to me in the data mapper. So on the right side, I'll see the parameters that it can receive. I'll also see what it will send back, say like what ID and level. So what happens is, once I pick my business function, I'll go into one that's configured for you. This allows me to map data into it. And on the left side of what we call a data mapper here, I'm going to have SharePoint represented. And SharePoint has all the different fields in a form. On the right side, I have my JD business function, and I can create a map in between the two. So I can plug this field into there just by drawing a line across. And see, it creates a data relationship between the source and destination. So as I put, say, the work country into country over there, see that creates a maroon line that goes across. So that's how I know that field's going across that way. As I mark on different ones, you'll see the lines change color to show me what field it's related to on the other side of the screen. Same thing if I go over here, it'll paint the other side blue. Now, these are very, very simple relationships, one-to-one mappings. It looks kind of complex because there's all the lines going across. But you can also do more complex mapping. So if you want to take a couple of these together and say that if I could take 2 or 3 or more of these together and go into there and create what's called an expression. And an expression would allow me to say something like if the country is USA, then maybe we could do something different with the maybe the cities need to be uppercase. So the Postal Service likes it anyway. Or otherwise, maybe not. So, I mean, there's just all kinds of ways you can manipulate and flip your data, and it's really that easy. I just made an expression in here, and even though the environment's totally code-free, you can do expressions similar to what you can do in Excel to have cells have dynamic values. And here, we could have this field have a dynamic value, in which case, as that went across, it would go through this little FX, which would transform it and run my expression. So it is a very powerful tool, despite the fact that it looks simple and it just looks like you're just dragging icons around. Underneath the surface, there's a very powerful engine that it runs on our Magic XPA technology that will be able to run those expressions and basically make this all work. So I'll cancel out of there. Now on the SharePoint side, it's actually very similar. If I want to use SharePoint, remember every SharePoint server is going to be completely unique. Try and find me 2 that are the same, or 2 environments that are the same. It just won't happen. The reason is because everybody can make their own sites, site collections, libraries, lists, and fields within those lists. So obviously they're going to be a bit different. So knowing that, it would be hard to use with a web service component because the web service component wouldn't be able to dynamically understand what fields are available in each list. So now enter the SharePoint component, how it can address that issue. The SharePoint component knows what data elements SharePoint expects by expects to receive by doing a discovery. As I go into it, it will then go in and search my server for lists and libraries that are available. So here's a collection of lists that I can grab. I can grab the one I want. You can also set it to libraries. The difference is lists is typically your data. Everything out there that has data in SharePoint will have a list, even if you don't access the list directly. Or a library, and a library would be a document repository, like where do you put your stored documents or things like that. So you pick what you want. You pick the operation you want to do, like query, add, update, delete. Very, very easy to say you want to do. And then you say OK, and what it'll do is it'll present the SharePoint list in a data mapper. and you can map into that, and it would every line that you mapped in there would create a record in SharePoint. That simply. So it's a very, very easy way of doing something that would otherwise be very hard. The other thing you're doing here is you're creating an integration that is loosely coupled, and it uses all the correct APIs. So as we go into here, you'll see I have a resource here for SharePoint. Like, for instance, I'll have my credentials for SharePoint. I'll have my credentials for JD World. I'll have my credentials for JD Enterprise One. We're using these credentials to log into the system as we interact with it, as we interact with SharePoint, as we interact with JDE. That means that we're abiding by the security that's native to that system. So as I have my JDE user, if I change this user to be a whole different user from JDE to JDE Test 1, that's actually that user, it would then only be able to do whatever that user and role had the capabilities to do. So it isolates it and abides by the JD security. So basically that means that we're not doing anything that's sort of a hokey direct database trigger or thing like that. We're actually calling real JD business functions that provide us connectivity, but also data validation. They're doing, they're making sure if you create an order, they're making sure are the items real. If you're creating a bill of materials, it's making sure that the items underneath the bill of materials exist. If you're creating a business partner, it's making sure that the state and country codes are valid. So you won't have any foreign key mismatches. So the business functions do provide us a lot of functionality. They're also very fast. They're written in native C, so on the actual JD application server. So when we call them, they really, really are quite fast. As a for instance, I'm going to open up the XPI monitor. I'm going to go back and show what happened when we ran the flow that actually called JDE. Now, since the Magic XPI engine itself is transparent, it's a Windows service. Remember, there's no user interface for it. It just works. We can go into the monitor and see what it's doing, and basically see that this project here, because it's green, is running, and I can see if it's idle or if it's which projects are turned off. But I'll drill into it, and I can go and see how fast we were able to call a JD business function. So in here, I can see that we actually we queried SharePoint, and then we did a validation. The validation took 78 thousandths of a second, very quickly. We can see it took us about 2 seconds to call JDE, which I have a really slow JD server. Typically, that would be under like 1/10 of a second. And then we were able to go back and send it to SharePoint in 2/10 of a second. The whole thing was 2.5 seconds start to finish to get a record from SharePoint into JD. Quite fast, but it actually gets a lot better because actually, as it's online longer, it establishes these connections and actually maintains a persistent connection pool to JDE and goes much faster. So while it took 2 seconds to log into JDE and do that, you see, if I did another record, it would be done in a fraction of a second because that connection is already done. And that's one huge advantage that having a persistent integration engine has over using batch files and script files and whatnot, is it maintains those connections and can reuse them over and over, which is much less work against your hardware than, say, logging into JD every time. So, Glenn, do we have any questions? I know we only have a few minutes left. So
let's see. We'd invite you to enter your questions into the chat box or into the questions box, and we'll take some time to look at those and see how we might be able to answer them. So please go ahead, type in your question, and we will take a moment to answer that question as soon as you've had a chance to do that.
While we're waiting on those, a lot of times the questions are about versioning of JDE. The components compatible with JDE 8.10 on Enterprise 1 all the way up through, I think, 9.1, really. So we basically can work with any version of JD out there. On the world side, we have a world adapter as well that we didn't talk too much about. But the world adapter can call your Z-table functions in real time. So we would basically be able to save data to a Z-table, call the processor that would be able to validate the data and get it into the real tables. And all of that then is done basically in series right away, so that you're not waiting for some process to kick off that does it later. So you get all the functionality, or so you basically get the real-time integration in with World that you would normally have to have E1 to have. So it's a nice benefit to the adapter.
Because we're looking at Microsoft Exchange integration to JD Edwards as well. How could we accomplish that?
Sure. Well, we do have an Exchange component. The Exchange component is can do, of course, emails, sending and receiving emails. But beyond that, it's also capable of working with basically your. I don't have an Exchange server, so I can't show you yet. But basically, it's capable of working with calendars and also with contacts. So if you have a scenario where there's a let's just say there's a check that needs to go out or something like that, or a new sale comes in, you can go and affect someone's calendar. So maybe you can go to the accountant's calendar and add it on the Exchange server. Or maybe if every time a new customer is inputted into, say, into JDE, you want to create it in the relevant salesperson's Outlook contacts. You can do that as well. So it's basically the business logic is entirely up to you. The tool is easy enough to create your own flows, so you don't need to have us tell you what you can do with it. As long as we have the components and the capabilities, you can integrate it in any way you want.
What is the cost per user?
It's not really relevant per user. The software is based on concurrent processes, the thread model. So in my monitor, I can see how many concurrent processes are running at one time, and it's licensed based on that. So if you need 4 or 8 or however many concurrent processes, it's based on how many transactions you would need to do per day. So it does scale very well. We can go anywhere from a really small, like 4-thread server, to some of our customers have hundreds of threads because they have lots of transactions, thousands, millions, etc. So it's really just based on however many transactions you need to run a day, and it can scale to your needs.
Okay, we have a question here. How would I use Magic with AP EDI, so for EDI transactions?
Certainly. We have a couple ways to go about that. You can create EDI documents using our built-in data mapper, especially if you're doing like simple just X12 documents or whatnot. I think you said AP, so it'd be something like probably invoicing, POs, things like that. PO or invoice responses.
Acknowledgements.
Yeah, acknowledgements. That's the word I was looking for. And basically, what you could do is you could do that with our flat file component. Be able to say go in and define your fields. Now, if you need to do that a lot, if you're doing a lot of EDI, we also offer an actual EDI component that is basically uses X12 documents and converts them in and out of XML so that Magic XPI can use it natively. XPI uses native XML for just about anything, and we have an available component that could go XML to EDI or EDI back to XML, and then from the XML you can map into business functions, just like I did with SharePoint.
I love the presentation by Jarrell Juvenile Group, Tim Pickett, and Brian O'Day at Collaborate this last week in Denver, because they were showing their application and they were doing integration between JD Edwards Enterprise One and the IBM WebSphere e-commerce platform. The interesting thing is that they were naming their magic flows after EDI document numbers, even though they weren't actually doing EDI, because it was just easier for them to think in terms of what the EDI document numbers are,
Sure.
what business process that identified for them, and so forth, even though actually everything was going, basically web services and XML from end to end.
Right.
It's kind of funny because we've actually had some customers, and EDI is great technology, but we've had some customers come to us and go, you know what? We don't need any EDI anymore. We can actually avoid our EDI van charges because this is doing everything we need it to do, and we're not so mandated to EDI by vendors and so forth that we have to do that. Others are heavily into the EDI and their use of processes that you described.
Right. Yeah. You have EDI is a very ambiguous term, but typically when you say that, you're talking about X12, which is your exact standards, and even within those. Even within what are supposedly standards, there's people that have non-standard ones. So we actually do have people that use it to communicate with, say, like Walmart or other ones that are big enough to have their own influence on the standard and say, no, this is how you do X12, even though it's supposedly standard. So it just shows how flexible the tool is, that we can do simple files over FTP, which are not X12 compliant, or we can do full X12 compliance as well.
You realize that when that restart later comes up on your screen, Ryan, people all across the webinar world are panicking.
Don't click the wrong button.
They think their screen is about to.
Oh yeah, I know. And I panic because if I click the wrong one, it restarts the server, and then we just sit here and talk about the weather for 10 minutes while it reboots.
Yeah, so you've got to be careful which one of those buttons you press.
Yes.
Well, hey, it looks like we've exhausted the questions, and so I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you very much, Ryan, for a great demo, and we will look forward to seeing you all again as we continue Magic Webinar Week. We will be talking about PeopleSoft and Primavera tomorrow for any of you who might happen